Lenier Dominguez here. And this is an Italian, if I'm not entirely mistaken. Both players seems to be probably still in prep.
You know, it's quite tricky because it could be as easy also as 𝙬𝙬𝙬𝙬 because the bishop is on b5. I think you're right. Just a second, let me check it, because there is a typical variation when sometimes you start as an Italian and the bishop still ends on b5. So let us check it, what this is. Yeah, it's Italian, you're right. Yeah, so the modern theory has evolved ever since the Italian game or 𝙬𝙬𝙬𝙬 has been tested in the modern practice. So a5 is the modern move. Normally, let's say how the old masters used to play this. They would play something like, I'm not sure, let's say starting with a6, we are going to play h3, h6, rook e1, short castle, knight e2, bishop a7, bishop b3, and this is how they usually would start this, right? And then there's the typical maneuver of knight f1, knight g3, and white is trying to play either d4 or expand at the queen side. And then at some point, somebody, I guess, figured out that white can play very early b4, a4, and try to grab a lot of space at the queen side, which should give him slightly better chances. So that's why black even has started to explore such amazing ideas like a5 immediately. And this is what I perhaps mentioned in one of the previous round broadcasts, is that in the modern chess, those aggressive pawn pushes at a king side and at a queen side have become incredibly popular, fighting for the space advantage.
Yeah, for me, you know, the Italian and all the Spanish openings, they are just filled with so much theory and so many differences in the move orders that I just don't understand. It's simply too much for me. There's just so much different stuff to remember and to understand. So I'm gonna let you take the wheel completely on this one, because to me there's just too much stuff to remember.
I mean, Ellen, thank you, because this is one of my absolute favorite topics. The Italian game and the 𝙬𝙬𝙬𝙬 is where I feel really good. So after bishop e6, again, here's the trick. If we compare this position with the pawn on a6 and let's say the bishop on a7, white would normally take, and something like b4, a4, again, try to grab space. So that's why this a5 in inclusion of bishop e6 is a very nice idea for black, because white cannot no longer do this, and black is very active at the f file, maybe queen e8, queen g6, knight h5, knight f4, and this bishop. It's really, really active. So that's why the modern theory suggests you have to play bishop b5. You avoided the trade, and you want to prepare to play d4 at some point later. It's a loss of a tempo, but this is the modern theory. So 97.
So can I just ask, you say that white doesn't want to trade on e6, which I think makes so much sense from what you just said, with black getting a lot of counterplay and a lot of activity, and white does not have the same kind of activity on the queen side. But let's say instead of white taking on e6, can you make another move in this position then? If you try to play maybe knight f1, I don't know how the double pawns are going to be, but I've seen positions like this where black takes on c4, or if white just tries to make another developing move, not trading on black's terms, but trying to trade on their own terms.
I think so. There is another alternative, which I'm going to show to you. This position, I think it's not really so great from white's perspective, because when we look at this position, white's position is very solid, but there is no pawn breaks. And I think it's very important for any opening to have ability to play active with the pawns. So there is no f4, which makes no sense. There is no b4. There is no counter strikes. g4 is weird since there's no h6, right? So I mean, okay, white is going to play with pieces, but the position has a risk of being static. So you mentioned this other idea, what white could do. Now there is, I'm not sure if in this particular position, but people have started to explore the move of b3.
Okay. Yeah.
So b3 is a modern idea. And the point is, after bishop c4, which nobody takes, After b takes, we get some kind of a nimzo position. So again, knight f1, knight e3, maybe knight e5, and the difference with the pawn on b3, and instead of the d3, white can prepare to play d4 and fight either for d4 or maybe the same f4, because this pawn structure allows white to be more elastic in the center. So to be honest, I'm not even sure what is better here. Is it b3? Because I've seen this combination being one of the critical and the most modern ideas in the Italian game. But okay, Lenier decided to play bishop b5, knight e7, d4, knight g6. So all of this makes a perfect sense. And since black is threatening to play c6, b5, a4, again, expand at a queenside, gain space. Lenier retreats, bishop a4. And after knight h5, knight f1, this is the position which we have on the board.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. So you're saying that this is probably still in some kind of theory then?
Definitely the structure. I'm not 100% familiar with this particular position, but these ideas of bishop b5, wanting to play d4, then retreat of bishop a4 also makes perfect sense. Now, I'm not sure why Wesley here is not playing c6, because the c6, b5, and a4 idea, grabbing more space at the queenside, it's very typical, but this knight h5, knight f4 also makes quite a lot of sense to me.
So what happens if I, as white, decide to give up the bishop pair here? I have a little plan in mind. Of course, if you take with the, bishop takes, and if you take with the knight here, I want to take on e5. This pawn grabber is anonymous. We do love it here. So
all right, let's test it. What this is.
Yes, so I was thinking about the exact same thing. And here I wanted to probably go king h2, and I'm giving away the f2 pawn. Okay.
Or maybe not a f4 check even. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, okay, maybe.
Oh my goodness, do you want to do this? I don't know, it looks very risky. It's 3 pawns, right? Wait, yes. No, wait, 2 pawns. No, 2 pawns.
2 pawns, okay, so let's try to continue the line a little bit. I go queen d2.
Queen d2. And if I play, let's say, f5.
Okay.
I'm getting really, really scared here.
Yeah, me too. Okay, I'll try knight e3.
Check. I go away. E6.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. No, I was thinking knight e3 just to attack the knight on f2.
Yeah, but now I get the 3rd pawn.
Oh,
and the attack is going.
Yes. Okay.
I don't know. Okay, you could take it on f5. I could take with the rook. You could take it. I could be very creative here with some sacrifices, or even just c takes on d6. This is, maybe all of this is working. And if you switch on the engine and the engine says, it's great, it's +1 for white. But when you're playing this from the white's perspective and you see this knight f4, clearly Wesley, I don't think he is blundering the pawn on e5. Do you want to?
Probably this is exactly the kind of thing that he would have prepared from home, seeing that if white takes the pawn, there could be some kind of very strange line or attacking line where white has to play all the precise moves, and maybe it will just end up in a draw, who knows. But of course, Lenier, he's well prepared, it seems, and also just taking it a bit more chill here, not trying to grab any pawns, plays knight g3. And then we see something happening in the center with knight takes d4 and bishop takes, giving away the bishop pair here.
This is really interesting. So I assume that must be some kind of a preparation. And knight takes on d4 was played rather quickly by Lenier. And it asks the question, really, why can't you take with the c pawn? That's the first obvious choice. Why can't you take with the c pawn? And I think one of the typical ideas in the Italian game why black usually release voluntarily the tension from the center is e takes, c takes, and d5. So the threat is to take on e4, and let's say I'm making a null move, take on e4, knight e4, and establish an isolated pawn on d4 with excellent chances to block it on d5. So you really can't do that, I guess. Play e5. Now f6 could be very interesting. So again, I want to take on e5. The rook stands exactly where it belongs, and this bishop on a7 feels like a sniper, still ready to participate in the game at the right moment. And all of black's pieces, they are sort of looking at the white king. So I think that's a really, really, really interesting idea. And I think this is what explains why Lenier, without much of a thought, took with the knight. And after bishop takes on d4, I think it's a good guess he's going to take with the queen.
Yeah, I think you're completely right. And you're saying also taking with the queen in this position, as c takes d4, could fall into some of the same problems with d5?
I can only guess. I think so. Although here something has changed because
there's no longer the bishop on a7, yeah?
Yeah, there's no longer the bishop, and there's the extra resource of queen of 3. So it's really concrete. It depends what white can do after this move. Maybe attack the knight, but queen of 3, I just take it, right? And the knight goes back to d5. You no longer are able to threaten the knight on f4. I mean, this is a very important intermezzo for black. And after e5, f6, this is clearly the critical position. And a lot of depends, how do you properly evaluate? So, of course, Lenier sees this. He's evaluating, can I do this? Because he has 2 bishops. He has the pawn majority at a king side. This could be it. This could be the way he can try to get the game. On the contrary, maybe a positional queen takes on d4 is safer because f5 or d5 don't look so scary anymore, and he can simply continue to play a positional game with 2 bishops.
Yeah, and it might be the first time that Lenier is out of prep, I could imagine, because he is taking his time here, figuring out how he should capture on d4. And how do you say we try to move to the next game? Because f6 move, trying to open up for the rook in case white ever goes e5. I know I just teased you about getting an Italian game, but people are saying that opponent blundered and is losing. So maybe we should quickly go to the game between those two just to see the latest developments, and then we can...
sorry, wrong game. Again, wrong game. Just a second. Whoa. I think I lost, I saw it with the corner of an eye. When we left it, I saw that Wesley played f5. When I said that here, it feels really like if somebody is charging, is black, because he's choosing the d takes on e4, or maybe waiting for white to play e5, so that there's f6. Even more, Wesley just played f5, going for a very aggressive pawn push in the center. So let's say if something like e5 would happen.
Yeah, because when we were looking at it, I was actually considering f5, but I thought, no, that can't be the move, because then e5 and we won't have the chance to open up with e6.
There could be some tactics. I cannot immediately tell, but I think it could be something along the lines of knight g2. Let's
goodness.
say I just don't know. I just guessing. So knight g2, king g2, f4, and let's say, where do you put it?
Well, it would be fun to go to h1, but probably not the best square.
Not fun for Lenier, right?
No, I do like a knight on h1. So yeah, let's say knight f2, f1. Sorry.
Knight
then
f1.
We have the option of protecting the h2 square or putting the knight on h2 ourselves.
There could be something. Well, I'm not sure there is really something, but
rook f5.
Rook f5, or maybe even at some point something like take an f3. But specifically here, you have bishop f3. You know, I don't know. It just feels that there might be some shot here, like taking or taking, but this didn't happen. And Lenier took on f5. Took on f5, queen g3, already feeling on the defensive. Takes, knight h3.
Yeah, and yes, let's just go a little bit slower through this variation, because what So found here was actually a very, very forcing way to get a nice endgame. So rook takes yeah, bishop takes f5 here, of course, because the f5 square is protected. And now if white decides to not take the bishop, there could be all sorts of takes on h3 or takes on g2, as the rook on f8 is pointing directly towards that queen on f3. So knight takes f5, pretty much forced in this position. And after rook takes f5, white played queen g3 because the white king is under pressure. So you want to trade queens when you're white, but then So found this forcing way after queen takes g3 and f takes g3, because knight d3 is a fork to the two rooks on c1 and e1. As white, you're forced to play bishop c2 here.
But check out this move, Ellen. I mean, quite unbelievable, because I imagine Lenier's idea was knight takes on c1, bishop takes on f5, sacrifice the pawn on a2, and then somehow rely on the power of your bishops, which is the next move. I have no idea, really. Maybe h4, h5, maybe take on g6, rook e7. Either of them could work, but check out the next move. Wesley plays rook f2.
That is such a nice move.
Very nice.
Really, right. Really nice.
Keeping under attack the rooks, but also attacking the bishop on d2. Small tactics. So let's say something like bishop e3 fails, the rook takes on c2, takes, and knight takes on e1. And
how about, yeah, and if rook e2, there's knight takes g2.
A rook what?
Rook e2 in the end of that variation.
Here, takes, here. Rook e2 is knight e3. Or rook
knight d3, sorry, yeah.
Yeah. Rook d2, I have a good feeling this knight is going to stay. Something like rook e8.
Mm-hmm. And if nothing else, you always have knight takes g2 with a very nice endgame.
Yeah, at least in that position. But here you are threatening to take either the rook on c1 or the rook on e1. And that's why, again, a forced line. Take, attacking the bishop, attacking the pawn. So you have to take. Again, this is under attack. And Lenier is trying to escape with activity of the rooks. And again, another powerful move. I'm sorry, this didn't happen. Wait, did it?
Yeah, rook takes b2, rook c to e1. And Wesley just trying to get that other rook into f2. This is a pawn, but it looks like so much more than a pawn. To me, it looks like almost 3 pawns when you just look at it visually, no?
It just looks crushing, to be honest.
Yes.
I mean, a powerful game by Wesley, because once he trades the pair of rooks, these 3 pawns essentially are blocked by these 2 pawns, and black has just 2 extra pawns at the queen side, and the rook is still very active.
Yeah, this is a. I like that variation so much from Wesley. Rook f2. And he also has played all of this fairly quickly, because last time we were here, I believe that he had something like 50 minutes and Lenier had 15. But now Lenier has 4 and Wesley has 43. I think Wesley's going to win this game.
He looks definitely great. And again, let us remind you, dear viewers, this is a leader game in, I think it was Pool D. The players, Lenier, Dominguez, and Wesley, so they are sharing the lead in the tournament with 2 points out of 3, as you're seeing this, and they're playing it right now. So this could be a huge game to decide who is going to qualify for the semifinal, because again, once again, reminding the regulations of the tournament, only 1 player from every single pool qualifies for the semifinal.
Yeah, and not only would Wesley be leading the tournament or leading that pool by a whole point, but he also needs to play against Shirov in the next round, who's had a tough tournament. And then he has white against Pentala Harikrishna in the 6th and final round. So I'm not saying it will be easy. Nobody said it was easy, but I will say that it does seem like a win in this game would give him extremely good chances. Though Lenier is trying to go for some perpetual on the 7th rank here.
But the bar is merciless. It's just dropping like a stone. And this idea of doubling the rooks on the 7th rank, I think it's the only practical choice. I can completely relate to that because everything else just feels bad and he wants to double the rooks. And again, maybe this trick is worth showing. Check here and black just wasted the tempo. So you cannot play this idea of rook f7 and then go rook f8. So this followed very quickly. Wesley saw this. Of course, he saw this. He had to calculate this. Rook e7 takes here, king f1, and now Wesley has a choice. Of course, white is threatening with the perpetual check, so at least black can give a check here, and I don't know, do what next? Maybe take on a2, maybe play b5. There's many moves.
Yeah, and this is a tactic which is actually very easy to miss sometimes. I've tried before where I was certain that I'd get the perpetual on the 7th rank, but because the opponent's rooks were active, they were stopping my rooks from giving the perpetual check. Right. So, and also, you know, you said this was the only practical chance, and I completely agree, but I don't know how practical it is when your opponent has 40 minutes more than you. So
I think Wesley should have this easily winning position, and the bar pretty much confirms it. The white king is in a mating net, and this is going to help him. So he needs to figure out two things. First, how to avoid the perpetual check, or maybe creating mating threats for his king. And second, maybe force the rook trade. How do you do that? I have not yet any idea. Let's say we can try to give a check here. And this is not a good idea, right? Because this is going to be perpetual check.
Yes.
So how do I keep my, maybe something like king of fate? King of fate.
King of fate, you say.
And
when the rook moves, you want to go rook h2. Well, not in this position, not in this
maybe
position.
Something like check, check. Something like...
We can at least include rook takes a2.
You're absolutely right.
And then I don't know if you can just put the rook on b2 again and just run with the a pawn.
Check an a4.
I also like what he did here. He played king h7, trying to run after rook takes g7.
That's it. That's even simpler. So rook g7, king h6, h4, king h5.
And now the white king is even running to h3 here.
I think this is equaling resignation from white. What a game by Wesley. And I have a feeling that Lenier simply collapsed very quickly. Quite surprising. So we go back to this position. I really didn't like this position at this moment from white. The bar was saying it's equal, but I saw that from the white's perspective, this position is rather unpleasant because this d takes on e4 is a threat. E takes f6 is an annoyance. So he played rook c1, and Wesley just bombed away this move, f5, going for the initiative, and something went terribly wrong here for Lenier. I don't know what he should have done. Maybe e5, maybe this entire approach of knight f5, queen g3, this was probably the final mistake, because after this seems to be quite forced.
Yeah, but that whole variation with rook takes f2 in the end, also very difficult to see. And I'm just trying to check some times here, seeing how much time they spend on each move. And I can see that it did seem like queen g3 was played very quickly. So I suspect that Dominguez, he missed this. But he spent a whole 37 minutes on move 19 on bishop d2, and this just tells me that he was uncomfortable from the beginning, and being low on time does not make it better.
All right. Well, I have a theory, you know, because I was watching one of the interviews with Wesley, and he said that during the first game he was not feeling really well because he had the jet lag.
Mm-hmm. Maybe
this has something to do with the jet lag. So what's a jet lag? Once you cross the Atlantic Ocean or a lot of time zones, it's difficult to adjust, right? And maybe this also has something to do with the American players, because they essentially had to come from the United States. And usually I think the rule of the jet lag, the most difficult days are days 7 and 9. I mean, this I've heard somewhere in some theory.
Really? I've never heard
so.
that.
I think so. I mean, days 7 and 9, at some point your biological clock starts to do wonders. I'm not sure really, because I usually suffer myself just first couple of days and that's it. But Wesley said himself, first day, it was quite tough for him, but then he was feeling better and better.
Mm-hmm. No, that's very interesting. I have never heard about day 7 and 9 before.
You never had the jet lag, had you?
Well, I had, but I've only had one serious jet lag, and that was when I was traveling to India, and I was traveling during night. So when I arrived there, it was pretty much just during the day, and I was completely wrecked. I slept the entire day, which was not very good for my jet lag, but since it was chess, you're so tired anyway, so it doesn't make much difference.
Right. All right, let's move on. So a huge victory this is going to be for Wesley. So I think he is going to do the job until the end. So we should go back to another game. So I propose to